This week's Parshas are Parshas Chukas and Balak. The Mechaber in Siman Reish Tez Zayin Paskins Aser lehanes mereach toiv ad sheyavarich. You're not allowed to have ana from a reach, a nice smelling reach, until you make a bracha. Kodim sheyariach, before you smell. Aval la'acharav ein tzarich levarich, but afterwards you do not have to make a bracha. Zak the Magen Avram in Ois Aleph. First, he brings from Rashi, Mishum Dahana Mu'etasi. It's a Rashi Anida, the Magen Avram says. Afterwards, the Magen Avram brings from a Kolboy, Ubekolboy Pirish Mishum Dikshemafsik Hareach Mechoitmai Kvar Avrahana Asai. Because after you smell, there's already no more Hana. Lachein Ein Mevarich Bracha Achrena. That's why you don't make a Bracha Achrena. Masha Ein Kein Ba'achila Shenishara Teich Mea. Masha Ein Kein Achila that stays in your stomach, memela, you can make a bracha afterwards. So we have two pshatim in why you don't make a bracha achrena after you smell it. Either Rashi in Nida that says because it's hana mu'etas, it's just a small hana, it's not enough of a hana to be mechayiv you to make a bracha. Or we have the kolbay, that the kolbay says that it's different from achila. Achila stays in your stomach, and therefore you can make a bracha achrena, you can make brachas hamazon, but smelling evaporates immediately. It's not anymore in your nose. So Zak, Fekte Chazanish in Eirechayim, Simin Chav Ches, a Bombakash. Fekte Chazanish, that the Gemara in Bracha, Staff Mem Ches Amabay says, Moshe Tikein Lehem Yisroel Birchas Hazon B'Shal Sheyorad Lehem Amon. When the Mann came down, Moshe was masakin to make Birchas Hamazon. It's Fekte Chazanish. The Mann was nibla be'varim, it evaporated right away, and still we make a birchas hamazon. So mikan raya, zok the chazanish, not like the kolbay, that even if something is gone right away, you can still make a birchas hamazon. So the only time you need that the food should still be around is if you were mafsik, if you made a hefsik. If you made a hefsek, so then we need that there should still be the food in your stomach in order for you to make birchas hamazon. But stam avada, even if the food is not there, v'haraya the man, you could still make a birchas hamazon. So he says, why don't you make a bracha achrona on the reach? Zak the Chazanish. So the Chazanish says, because you have to say like Rashi, you have to say like the other pshat, that it's hana mu'etas. So Fek the Chazanish, he doesn't begin to understand the kolboy that's brought in the Magen Avram, because the Mann is a raya muchachas that even though it evaporates immediately, still you make a... Moshe was misakin to say benching on the Mann, so you see that you can make a bracha achrona even on something which evaporates. So memela on reach, you should also be able to make a bracha achrona. Azay Zak the Chazanish. Pasuk in this week's Parsha, Perek Chaf Aleph Pasuk Dalet says, Vayedaber ha'am be'lekim u'v'Moshe, lama helisunu mi Mitzrayim lamus ba'midbar. Why did you take us out of Mitzrayim to die in the midbar? Ki ein lechem ve'ein mayim. There's no bread, there's no water. V'nafshenu katza ba'lechem ha'kloikel. And our nefesh is disgusted in the bread ha'kloikel, which we'll see how everyone learns these words. So before we get into what nafshenu katza means, what is pashup shan the pasuk ki ein lechem ve'ein mayim? There's no bread, there's no water. They had the Mann, they had the be'er. What's going on? So Rabbeinu Bachi asks, yesh l'tmaya. What's going on? They had the Mann, they had the be'er. They just got the nace of the mayim from the be'er. So he says a moya de kazach. He says, the taina was hine in yonei meshune. Ein lanu lechem umayim kishara umois. We don't have lechem and mayim like the rest of the nations. Kishara umois im hayu zakarnei chayavin. Whether they're zakar or chayav, yesh lahem lechem lasoiva. Right? They have bread. Vein tzarich leimer amayim. Aval anu zakdar iker kol hanagasenu machalenu mustainu be'inyan mechudash. It's a whole different bria we have. Ki ein lanu lechem b'yayim echad liyamim harbe. We don't have bread for a bunch of days. like the rest of the nations. We have bread every day. And the Mayim went away, the Mayim comes back. So sagt Rabbeinu Bachya, hine anu mechudashim ban haga yoser mishara umos. So this was Klal Yisrael's taina. They didn't like that they're different from the rest of the nations. Ein lechem ve'ein mayim doesn't mean we don't have bread, we don't have water. It means we don't have bread, we don't have water like normal people. We're on this madrega gedola you're keeping us on. And he says, and like the Gemara in Yuma Taka says, why did the Eibishter do this? Because the Eibishter wanted them to have, he says, lahargel nafsha b'midas habitachan v'amuna b'Hashem Yisbarach. The Eibishter wanted them to have bitachan and amuna. So Zakta Rabbeinu Bachya, that's why, because of this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the nechashim hasrafim. That's where the psukim right afterwards. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the snakes, hasrafim, the burning snakes. So Chazal Darshan, he says, that first of all, it's Mida Keneged Mida. They said Lashon Hara on the Mann, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the snakes. But V'ayid, he says a fascinating thing, that Klal Yisrael never had to deal with snakes before, because the Anani HaKavod used to burn them. The Anani HaKavod went ahead of them and burned them. So when they're tining on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he calls it's a Pella Hazeh, that the Anan used to just get rid of the Nechashim and the Akravim, they used to burn them. So comes along HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that Vayishalach Hashem ba'ames hanechashim asrafim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't have to create these Nechashim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't have to make them make new things here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu just didn't let the Anani HaKavod burn them, and instead of the Nechashim Hasrafim instead of them being burnt by the Anani HaKavod, now they're coming and burning Klal Yisrael. They're the ones that are burning Klal Yisrael. And he says it's just like the Aruv, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't need to make the Makas Aruv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't need to make a new Bria. He didn't need to create animals. He just brought the animals. So that's what it means by Shalach Hashem Ba'am, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent, meaning the ones that were already there, they're just not being destroyed. So that's how Rabbeinu Bachya learns the psukim ki ein lechem ve'ein mayim, and what the einish was of the nechashim hasrafim. So, but lamaisa, what Klal Yisrael were complaining, v'nafshenu katza b'lechem hakloikel. L'chayra, Klal Yisrael already complained about the Mann back in Parshas Ba'aloischa by the Messianim, and that was in the second year. They complained. So, what are these two complaints that Klal Yisrael are complaining about? Back in Parshas Ba'aloischa, they complained about the Mann. What did they say? They said, "Va'ata nafshenu yevesha ein koil bilti el hamani neinu." That was in middle of the taina and the slav. And now again, they're saying, "V'nafshenu katza b'lechem hakloikel." What are these two complaints about the Mann? So I saw the Netziv in his Sefer on the Sifri, Piska Lamed, on the pasuk Ve'ata nafshenu yevesha ein kol zokt the Sifri Amru. Klal Yisrael said, "Asad l'sapeach b'soich kreisenu lehargenu." It's going to blow up in our stomachs. Yesh lecha yilud isha she'ein moitzi masha eichel. Is there somebody who's born from a woman that does not she'ein moitzi masha eichel, that is not moitzi what they eat? So that was what Klal Yisrael's taina was back then. Asad l'sapech b'seich kreisenu. Yesh lecha yilud isha she'ein moitzi masha eichel. So I got saw the Sefer Gilyonei Hashas from Rabbi Yosef Engel. He says, "What's this lashon yilud isha? Why didn't they just say yesh lecha adam? Well, what's this? Somebody who's born from a woman." So just to be medayik in the lashon, the Rabbi Yosef Engel Sefer Gilyonei Hashas, he says that there is something that's not born, that's eichel ve'ener moitzi. What is that? A ober b'mei imay. Ober, when it's in its mother's stomach, is eichel and it's not moitzi. So you have something which is not born, which is Eichel ve'ener moitzi. So that's Yilud. And what's Isha? Because there's also a Gemara in Gittin, Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis, that says that there's this Yetush, there's this worm that's Machnes ve'ener moitzi. So you also have something which is a Yilud, but not from an Isha, that is Machnes ve'ener moitzi. So Zakti Gilyoyne Hashas, that's why they were very medayik to say, Klum yesh Yilud Isha shemachnes ve'ener moitzi. The Dafka, there's no such thing as a person born from a woman that's machnes ve'ener moitzi. There are things there's an ober and there's this yitush that are moitzi, that are machnes ve'ener moitzi, but the taina was klum yesh yilud isha machnes ve'ener moitzi. So Zakta Netziv in his sefer Emek HaNetziv on the Sefri, he says l'chayr it's a peladik azach Klal Yisrael's taina va'ata nafshenu yevesha ein koil. What are they saying? They had the Mann for a year already. They had the Mann for a year, and they saw that the Mann doesn't do anything. Fakir, they feel better than ever. They're eating. So why all of a sudden are they worried? Yesh lecha yilud isha shemachnes ve'ener moitzi. He says, Mamash apela hadrush hazel lechayr tamua frekt the netziv. So zakta netziv pshat like this, that Klal Yisrael knew that the Mann was ruchnius, but he tells it avek like this. He says, Yedua, all Michael goes into the body, and it turns into dam. Some of it turns into dam, and the psilas goes lechutz al yedei the stomach, and he says nefesh hu adam. The nefesh is the dam, shenas al yedei hamazon, that it gets made through the food, and that's where the ruach chiyuni, the chiyus of a person is totally in the dam. And he says, if the Michael doesn't turn into dam, so then the nefesh wouldn't have anything keeping it in the person, because if the Michael, the nefesh is totally in the dam. So Zakta Netziv, that the Mann was be'emes like all other food, that it went into the stomach and it got turned into dam. But there was no psilus. It was kuloi dam zach v'naki. There was nothing that needed to go. It's very similar to what we spoke about a couple weeks ago from Reb Chaim Volozhiner, that he says in Ruach Chaim, Paragimel Mishnah Gimel. He's mamish, well, the Netziv was kind of related to Reb Chaim Volozhiner. He was an Einikel. I think he was an Einikel. So they're in the same yeshiva, so they're saying very similar Torah. But so what was Klal Yisrael's mistake? Klal Yisrael's mistake was that they thought that the Mann, instead of turning into dam, it was just staying there, and the nefesh was living from that food that was there. The nefesh didn't need the dam. That's what they thought the nace of the Mann was. So he says, Lefizeh, that was what they were saying. What's going to happen when we die? When we die, our stomachs are just going to explode, because the nefesh is not going to be there, and there's all the food that's just sitting there is just going to explode. So that was what their taina was. He has a raya from a lashon in a Bamidbar Rabbah in Nasai. The lashon of theirs is theirs. Amalei chavere misyari ani shaliyoyim achron tinafach crazy v'tifka. And the Yom HaMisa, that's when they were scared of. They were maked there's a nace here. Klal Yisrael knew there was a nace, but they didn't versteh what the nace was, that the Mann was taka being nesachel into dam. It's just there was no psilus. That's why it wasn't coming out. So Zakta Netziv, that's why Klal Yisrael said, V'ata nafshenu yevesha. What do you mean? What do you mean our nefesh is dry? Because what they're saying is that their nefesh doesn't have. It's not through the dam. It's not through the dam. It's the nefesh is through the Mann itself, just the food. So Zakta Netziv, that's the pshat in the first taina on the Mann. That Klal Yisrael was saying, Klum yesh yilud isha shemachnes ve'ener moitzi, because they weren't makir in the nace. But what you have to understand is, Aibazeh, when it comes to the second time over here. We're 40 years later. We're in the 40th year. They zicher saw people die and not explode. So what? So now why are they complaining about it again? What's going on? So the Netziv in his Sefer Hamikdavar says a fascinating pshat in what the Taina was in over here. He says a Mordek Yisrael. He says in the last year that Klal Yisroel were going in the Midbar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to wean them off of their nursing. This is Mamash's Lashonis. He says, until now, Klal Yisrael was Mamash living b'derech nes. But what happened is that in this year, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want to just switch that they're going b'derech nes, kulei b'derech nes, and then all of a sudden, when they come into Eretz Yisrael, it's all of a sudden going to go back to regular. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to, this middle madrega where he had to be noig with them. He says b'derech hamemutza, that when a child is being weaned off from nursing, he starts eating a little bit. He's still nursing. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu was doing that to Klal Yisrael. So he says that's the pshat. V'nafshenu katza b'lechem ha'kloikel. That what happened is that once a little child starts eating food and starts tasting real food, he doesn't even want his mother's milk anymore. It's not as good as it used to be because you tasted other things. So he says, in this final year, Klal Yisrael started buying stuff from they finally hit a yishuv. There's other people around. They're not just in the midbar, middle of nowhere. So Klal Yisrael started getting other food. So from Edom, from Moav. So Memela, the Mann was not niskabel to them anymore. That's the pshat of nafshenu katza b'lechem ha'kloikel. Now this Netziv stims very geschmack with the Ramban. The Ramban in Parshas Kisavei, Perek Chavtes, Pasuk Hey, the Ramban says, Beferish, Ve'efsher oid, ki me'eshe yard hamon ad bayim el seir loy achlu lechem klal. They never ate lechem. Ki holchu ba midbar agoda anera. It was in this massive midbar. Av v'shnas harabayim karvu liyishuv. They got close. Umina esahi hayu ha'edaimim v'hamayavim makdimim oisam ba'lechem u'mamayim. That in that year, that's when Klal Yisrael started getting food from the Edomim and the Moavim. So, still, but the Ramban says mefurish that in the 39 years, Klal Yisrael only survived on the Mann. That's all they ate. But came the 40th year, that's when Klal Yisrael started getting the food from the Edom and Moav. And what the Netziv is explaining is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed to ease them back into regular society. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that now they're going to go into Eretz Yisrael and they're gonna be living like regular people, not ba'ofen nes. And Memela, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu already started giving them the food, getting them to get food from Edom and Moav. Aber Lamaisis, so the Netziv is explaining what it says, V'nafshenu katza b'lechem ha'kloikel. That means that because they already started tasting real food, so that's why now they're complaining again about the Mann. So that's the two complaints, according to the Netziv, that's the two complaints of the Mann. The Gvur Sari and Yuma Daf Ein Hayam Abeis, he has a shtickle different mahalach. He says, he brings that Gemara, I mean, the Netziv brought it from a Sefri, but it's also Gemara Nine Hema base. And they were complaining about Nafshenu Yevesha, that, Klum Yesh Yilidisha Shemachnis Ve'enu Moitzi. And that which they called the Lechem HaKloikel has nothing to do with Nivla Be'varim. It's just that the Mann was a Michael Kal. It was a very light. And he says, really, if you look at Unkelis, the Lashon of Unkelis is the Mechle Kal. So he asks from a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the Gemara says that Moshe called Klal Yisrael Kfuye Taiva, that they were Kafui Taif, because they said, V'nafshenu katza b'lechem ha'kloikel. Right? So so it sounds like it sounds like that again, that they're being kafui toiv, and it has nothing to do with being and it's all about being nivla beivarm. So he says that what the kafui toiv is not like what Rashi and Avodah Zarah Daf Hema Beis says, that it's again because nafsheni katzav lechem hakloikel, because the was nivla beivarm. That's not the pshat. The pshat is because the Mann had all the time in the world, and they're calling it this Michael Kal, this light Michael. So the Netziv says that is the two things. The one in Parshas Balak, which happened in the second year, that was saying that the Mann is Nivla Beivarim, and it Klum Yeshi Lud Isha Shemachnas Veinu Moitzi. But the one in Unzer Parshas Chukas and Nafshenu Katza Balachem HaKloikel, that's just saying, like the Targum Onkelos says, that it's a Michael Kal. And they were the Kafui Toiv that the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, that's saying that the Mann had so many other taimim. So why? So that's aggressed to Kafui Toiv that you have a food that has so many tastes, and they're calling it a Michael Kal. That's how the Shagas Aryeh and Gvuras Ari learns in Yuma Daf Ayin Hema Beis. Okay, so we have two pshatim, one from the Netziv and one from the Gvuras Ari. Lamaisa Rashi by us says, "V'nafshenu katza b'lechem hakloikel." Zakt Rashi, "Lefisha Mann nivla beivarim karu kloikel." The reason why it's called lechem hakloikel because they said Amru aser Amon hazeh sheyispach b'me'enu klum yesh yulad isha shemachnes ve'enu moitzi. Is there such a isha shemachnes ve'enu moitzi? Is there such a human being that could be machnes ve'enu moitzi? And the Balaturim also says kloikel b'gematria zeh reish mem ches shenivla b'reish mem ches eivarim, because it's nivla in the 248 eivarim. So you have to know why they the same way that Netziv asked on the Mann in Parshas Ba'aloischa that they already saw for a year. In the 40th year, for sure, it doesn't make sense. They just saw for 40 years that it's machnes ve'ena moitzi, and they're doing just fine. They're not dying, nothing. So this was mamish bothering me. What's going on over here? This taina makes no sense. So I saw the Chassam Sofer in Teres Moshe. He asked this kasha. And he says that if you look at the Gemara in Yuma in Hema Beis, the Gemara first says that the Mann was nivla b'masayim arba shmeina eivarim, and the Gemara asks, so Oibazeh, what do you mekayim b'yasei tia lechal azeinecha? That there's a whole parsha of how Klal Yisrael should go to the bathroom. So the Gemara answers, Dvarim shetagre umay sa'ila meicher neisan lahem, that it's referring to the stuff that the merchants used to sell them. And Reb Elazar ben Parta says, Av dvarim shetagre umay sa'ila meicher lahem man mafigan. Even the stuff that the merchants would sell them, still the Mann would get rid of. Only after, so elamani mekayim v'yasei tilachal zeinecha. So what did they need to go to the bathroom for? La'achar shesarchu, after they sinned. So Zaktach Sam Sefer Amoyde Kazach, he says that the Klal Yisrael knew that the Mann was ruchni. But now, like the Ramban says, that now that the 40th year they're buying stuff, and they're still not having to be mitzi anything. And really the pshat was because it was man mafigan, because the man didn't made it that even what they bought from the merchants, they didn't have to be mitzi. But Klal Yisrael didn't chap that, so that's why they kvetch. Klum yesh yiladisha shemakas ve'enu mitzi, because now they're buying stuff from the Umay Za'ilam. So that's why they said stuff about the Mann. And Ba'emes, after they said this stuff, Ba'emes, they had to go and be mitzi it. But the Chassam Sofer is saying that the reason why only in the 40th year are they complaining, because only now they're buying stuff. And that they didn't understand. If they're buying food from the merchants, how could they not have to be mitzi that food? And they didn't chap that the Mann takes care of that too. And Gufa, because they complained about that, then they had they had to go and be mitzi. But l'chayr this Chassam Sofer Pashat doesn't work in Pashat Pshat in the Gemara over there, because the Gemara, and this is really how I got to this whole shmuz. Rashi brings the drasha of a nafshenu katza balechem hakloikel. Rashi brings it. If you look at the Gemara in Yuma and Hema Beis, the Gemara darshans this and the pasuk in Ba'aloischa. The Gemara, Va'ata nafsheni yaveshu ein koil amru asid man zeh shetibach b'me'em klum yesh yilad isha shemachnes ve'ena moitzi. Is there a Yiladisha that's machnas ve'ena moitzi? So the Gemara darshans this drasha on the pasuk in Ba'aloischa, and Rashi is learning it on the pasuk in Parshas Chukas. So even if you want to say that they're both true, but now we're repeating it. We're repeating the same taina. It doesn't make sense. Now, if you look at the Gemara over there, the Gemara, like we just said, that according to Rebbe Elazar ben Parta, that said that even things that the merchants would sell them, the Mann would get rid of. So Ela mani mekayim yasid tilacha ala zeinecha la'achar shesarchu, after they were chayte. Zok Rashi la'achar shesarchu shel nislainenu al kach she'amru balechem hakloika. So Rashi brings the pasuk, unzer pasuk in Parshas Chukas, that la'achar shesarchu is referring to our pasuk of the nafshenu katza b'lechem hakloikel, and not the pasuk in Parshas Ba'aloischa v'ata nafshenu yevesha ein koil. So the Rashash asks, frek the Rashash, Tamua, Rashi's Mamash Apella, the Gemara Darish Zeisman v'ata nafshenu yevesha v'zayah b'shana hashenis, it was in the second year, u'mashma demei oz hutzrichu li'panos, it's mashma from then they had to go already to be mitzi. Why they say it again? And he ends off Rashi muchach b'meseches avodah zara. Like Rashi, it's muchach in avodah zara. Why is it muchach? Because, like we said, the Gemara over there says already that Moshe Rabbeinu called Klal Yisrael kafui taiv because they said v'nafshenu katza b'lechem hakloikel. So it sounds like that's. And Rashi Taka learns over there in the Gemara and Avodah Zarah that they were katza b'lechem hakloikel because it was nivla be'ivarim. Not like the Gemara in Yuma that says it's from the pasuk of Ata Nafsheni Yevesha. But we already said from the Gvuras Ari that you could learn that it's kafui taif for other reasons because they got all the tastes in the world and now they're complaining about it. So it's not so muchach from that Gemara like Rashi that both psukim need to be darshan. Klum yesh yilud isha shemachnes ve'ener moitzi. The Gvuras Ari asks another kasha on Rashi. The Gvuras Ari asks that the Gemara says weiter over here. The Gemara says that la'achar shesarchu, after they sinned, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now you have to go shalish parsais, because the machna of Klal Yisrael is shalish parsais. You have to go out of the machna. And the Gemara says, "V'tana kishenifnin a nifnin loy lifneim v'loy litzadei ela lacharei, and only behind them." So Rashi says, "Loy lifneim v'loy litzadei she'ein yodim le'ezet sad anonim holchim." They don't know which way the anonim are going. So frek the Gvuras Ari, if Rashi says this is referring to our parsha, Parshas Chukas, l'chayra there were no more anonim. Because the Rashi says, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, Rashi brings it, Vayishma Haknani, that Melech Arad heard, Zok Rashi, Ma Shmua Shama, the Gemara says, Ma Shmua Shama, Shama Shemeis Aaron V'nistalko Anoni covered, that the Anoni covered went away. So if Rashi learns this Gemara is referring to the second time, which is in the 40th year. L'chayr, there were no more anonim. Zokt the Gvur Sari Pashta Teretz. The Gemara in Taina says, Meis Aaron Estalko Anani Akavod v'chazu b'schus Moshe. They came back right away, b'schus Moshe, and he says, Shad achshav hayu Anani Akavod b'schus Hai, u'mikol makim chazu miyad b'schus Moshe. They came back right away, b'schus Moshe. So he says, so that kasha is not so shver because the Anonim came back miyad. So just to go off a little bit on a tangent, the Anani Akavod came back right away. So then, what's the thing that the Haknani Melech Harad heard that Meis Aaron Ministalka Anani Akavod? What he heard, they went away for 1 second and they came back a second later. It was mamish bothering me. So I thought maybe Gemaras don't have to shtim, it's Midrashim. But if you look at the Gemara in Tainus Daf Tesam and Aleph, that Gemara is the same Gemara that says that the Anonim left when the Vayishma Knani, that's why he came. And it says that it was Chazu B'schus Moshe, that he came back, it came back B'schus Moshe. So like the Gvur Ari is saying, it came back right away. It doesn't make any sense that the Yishma Knani, that he came, the Melech came because he heard they went away. But by the time he got there, they were back already. So was tutzach. So if you the Magia and the Gvur Ari brings, and I saw this Chazkuni. The Chazkuni says, "Batiksar nefesh am b'derech." The pasuk before, Parshas Aleph pasuk Dalet. The pasuk says that Klal Yisroel got disgusted by the derech. Why? Shahaisa hashemesh kaideres aleim, because the sun was beating down on them in the desert. Why was the sun beating down? Shrei nistalku anani covered mishemes Aaron. The anani covered went away mishemes Aaron. Now here we're talking already way after, not way after, but we're talking way after Aaron died. The Klal Yisrael cried for him for 30 days. And then they started. Then it was Vatiksan Navsham Badar. So you see, the Chazkuni doesn't hold that they came back. That it came back right away. I saw in the Sefer Megadim Chadashim, he brings a pasuk at the end of Parshas Balak when it says that when Klal Yisrael was chayte, so it says that. Kach is called Rashi Amba. Haika Isam Lashem Neged Hashamesh, and hang them Neged Hashamesh. Zokt Rashi Medrash Agada Hashemesh Moidia Es Hachaitim. The sun would tell us who sinned. Ha'anan Nikbal Mikenegdei VeHachama Zerechas Alav. The Anan would move away, and then the sun would shine on him. So Frekte Chazkuni and Rashi Harik Kfar Mishemes Aaron Nistalku Ha'ananim. And this is much later. And he's still saying it was Nistalku Ha'ananim. So the Chazkuni L'Shitase must hold that, I don't know for sure, if he holds that Bechlal, it was Chayze B'schus Moshe. It's Taka Machlaikis in a Mechilta Parshas B'Shalach, if the Anonim ever came back. Our Gemara in Tainus, Daf Tes says for sure that it came back. And the Gvur Sari is learning it came back right away. But l'chayra, to say that it came back right away is shver. The Chazkuni is not a raya, because it could be the Chazkuni Stam is going with that shita that it didn't come back at all. Ma'isa, the Megadim Chadashim, only he could find these Marmakaimis. He brings from a Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz in Yaris Devash Chelik Beis Drush Dalid that the Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz says that for sure it can't be that they came back. They didn't come back right away. What's the pshat? If they would have came back, there's no way. It has to be that there were some days that the Anan was the Ananim HaKavod didn't come back. It could be the Lashon of the Gvur Sari also. He didn't mean Chazu Miyad B'schus Moshe, like right away mamish, but it means it came back. Anyways, so that's the Gvur Sari Kasha and Teretz on Rashi. How does Rashi stem with the Anonim? Lamaisa, we have Shver, the Rishash's Kasha on Rashi, and really just what's going on? The Klal Yisrael are saying the same thing twice. Klal Yisrael are saying Klum yesh yilud isha shemachas b'nei moitzi. They said it in both Parshas Ba'aloischa when they said Va'ata nafshenu yavesha ein koil, and they also said it here V'nafshenu katza b'lechem ha'kloiko. And Rashi's learning both places that they said Klum yesh yilud isha shemachas b'nei moitzi. Even though Rashi in Chumash doesn't bring that drasha from Va'ata nafshenu yavesha ein koil, but the Gemara Mefurish in Yuma Ein Hema Beis learns it out of Va'ata nafshenu yavesha ein koil. So l'chayr Rashi is going with that drasha. So what's going on? Why do we have the same thing twice? So the Sefer Shemois Ba'aretz, which was written by the Kapos Tamarim in his Sefer on Yuma Taisus Yom Kippurim, he says that it could be that Klal Yisrael only got punished when they said it twice. Ukshashanu b'cheit v'amru b'lechem ha'kleiko nenshu laseit schutz. It could be that they just by the first time they weren't punished. They didn't have to go out. They weren't punished to yasei tia l'chala zeinecha. They weren't punished, and just when they said it again, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished them. And he has another mahalach there, Ayin Sham in Sefer Taisus Yom Kippurim on Yuma Ayin Hema Beis. I wanted to say maybe a shtickle different, but together with all these mahalchim, maybe you could say the pshat is that in both cases, both in Parshas Ba'aloischa and in Parshas Chukas, Klal Yisroel were about to go into Eretz Yisrael. Both by it's very similar to the Netziv, but it's more focused on Klum Yesh Yilud Isha Shemachas B'nei Moitzi. That Klal Yisrael were about to go into Eretz Yisrael. So they were just nervous. We're about to be naig regular people. So the Mann that's in us, what's going to happen to it when we go into Eretz Yisrael? Klum yesh yilud isha shemachnas v'nei moitzi. They were just very nervous. In both cases, Klal Yisrael was about to enter into being regular people with not ba'ofen. So they were nervous. What's going to be with the Mann that's within us? Klum yesh yilud isha shemachnas v'nei moitzi. So Avada, like Rashi could learn that both of them are the same taina, but they have a tzad hashava. They have a tzad hashava in what they're saying is that in both times they're about to go into Eretz Yisrael. Efsher ulai efsher loymar, that's the pshat in Rashi. So now we started off with a kasha from the Chazon Ish, that the Chazon Ish asks that how could you say the pshat why you don't make a bracha achrona on smell? Because, like the Kolbei said, because there's no achila b'teich me'av, there's nothing there. Frek the Chazon Ish. What about by Mann? What about by Mann where it's nesachel right away and still Moshe was misakin to make a birchas hamazon? So like the Netziv and like the Ruach Chaim, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, so l'chayr the kasha hepsuk nishtan. And this is what I saw in a Sefer Shalmei Yosef. It's from the Kail Panovich. So it's from B'Shem. We'll say B'Shem Amri Harav Shmuel as Chayek. Not sure who he is, but he says that like this mahalach, that the Mann was taken this achel, it turned into dam. It's just there was no psilus. So if there was no psilus, there was an ichul. There was something going on. It did go to the stomach, and it wasn't just like a ruchniistic food that it was like a smell, like they put it into their mouth and miyad it did its job. That's not what the Mann was. The Mann was like almost like regular food. It just didn't have any psilus. So like them, then you have no raya from Mann. The whole raya of the Chazon Ish was that he's learning Mann in a certain way. But if you learn that the Mann, like the Netziv said in Emek HaNetziv, and when Klal Yisrael, what they were kvetching, V'ata nafsheni yevesha ein koil, that it was b'emes regular food. So then the Chazon Ish heptzach nishtan. The Chazon Ish, his raya for Mann is nishkin raya. So what's the pshat in the Chazon Ish? How did the Chazon Ish learn what Mann is? So there's a Ramban the Sefer brings from the Ramban in Parshas Beshalach in Perek Tezayin Pasuk Zayin. The Ramban says, "V'dak yesh b'Mann inyan gadol." He says there's a grace zach. Because Rabbi Kiva says in the Gemara in Yuman Ayin Hema Beis is lechem shemalachei asharis eichlin. It's the same food that the malachei asharis eat. And Rabbi Shmuel says v'chi malachei asharis eichlin lechem. The lechem lo yachalti umayim lo shasisi. Malachim don't eat. Zok der Ramban that what is this food that Rabbi Kiva is talking about? Because v'einin hazeh she'amar Rabbi Kiva hu shekiyu malachei asharis beziv hashchina. Malachei asharis live with the ziv of the shchina. With the, I don't know how to translate ziv, the like the sparks of the shechina, and the Medrash Rabbah darshans v'ata mechaya es kulam, that Hakadosh Baruch Hu, you keep everyone alive, which means that ata michya lekulam, Hakadosh Baruch Hu alein, Hakadosh Baruch Hu himself is the food. That Hakadosh Baruch Hu is the food, and the Ramban says v'hamon hu mitoldos ha'or. This ziv, this light, is the Mann comes from that light. Shenisgashim b'ritzayin bara yisala, that the Mann was able to be nisgashim. This ar Hakadosh Baruch Hu made that this ar could turn into Mann. So Zok the Ramban, that's the Pshan Rebbe Kiva. Nimtza she'anshe amanu malachei asharis nizaynim midavar echad. They come from the same thing. And Rebbe Shmuel says that's not true. Because the malachim, they don't need this man. They get the food. Their kiyum is from the ar itself. They don't need something to be turned into something. But l'maisa, what you see from the Ramban is that Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel both agree what the man was. That it was this davar ruchni, complete davar ruchni. It wasn't something which even needed to be eaten. If Rabbi Shmuel was just saying that the malachim don't need to eat, they're able to just live from the ar itself. But the Ramban is saying that the man was a complete ruchni istikazach. And I saw that the Cheskuni, the Or Chaim and the Kli Yakar, both of them learn in our parsha, what's nafshenu katza balechem hakloikel? What does that mean? Zok the Or Chaim and the Kli Yakar, mamish like shnei neviim misnabnim misingnein echad, that they say that when people are going on the road, they like to eat food that will keep them satisfied for longer, that it will have to go through their body for longer. But when you eat something which is digested right away, so then you're hungry again. When you're on the road, it's not geshmak. When you're in your house, so that's geshmak, because you don't need the kayach. Zok the Or Chaim. It right away was eaten. The Or Chaim says that their stomachs were empty, and that's why they were kvetching about the road. The man was davar ruchni v'teichef nesachel. It's right away. This is mamish what the Chazon Ish holds. So the Chazon Ish holds mamish like what the Or Chaim and like the Sefer Shalmei Yosef Shmuel Aschik says the Ramban holds that the man was a davar ruchni and ganzen. It was complete ruchnius, and it was teichef nesachel. It was immediate. It was an immediate thing, and therefore Zok the Chazon Ish, it's very similar to reach. It's very similar to smell. Because smell also, as soon as you smell it, it's gone. And like the Or Chaim says, Shu davar ruchni v'teichev mesachel. So Memela miyushiv the Divrei Chazon Ish after this ganze shtickle. Yashikayach.